My name is Diane Marsh, and I was 32 years old when my mother died, and 32 years old when I discovered, in the same month, that the people my husband had chosen as his family saw her death primarily as a financial opportunity. I want to be precise about the timeline, because the timeline is the thing that makes this story what it is. My mother passed on a Tuesday in March after a 9-month illness that had been slow and then fast and then over in the particular way that terminal illness ends. Not dramatically, not with a warning, but with a Tuesday morning phone call and a drive to a hospital and a room that smelled like antiseptic and the particular silence of a space where someone was and is no longer. I had known it was coming. Knowing does not help as much as people who have not experienced it believe it does. I took 1 week off work. I could not afford more. I went back on the following Monday, and I sat at my desk, and I did my job, and I cried in the bathroom twice, and I answered emails, and I functioned the way people function when they are grieving and have no other option. My husband, Thomas, was attentive in the first week. He was present, and he said the right things, and he held me when I needed holding, and I was grateful for it. What I did not know in that first week was that while I was grieving and he was holding me, his family was having a different conversation. A conversation about the inheritance, about what my mother had left me, about what a family dinner might look like, and who, specifically, they expected to pay for it. Before I tell you what happened at that dinner, please hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and your local time in the comments. I love knowing where you are when you listen to this. Now let me take you back to the table. My mother left me $68,000. It was not a large inheritance by some measures, and it was everything by mine. Everything she had saved across 40 years of careful, ordinary living, the accumulated evidence of a woman who had gone without things so that the number in her account could grow, and so that when she was gone, I would have something solid to stand on. I knew about it before she died, because she had told me, practically and without sentiment, the way she approached most things, that she wanted me to use it to buy property, to build something permanent, to stop renting and start owning, and to do it without waiting for someone else to make it possible. I had not told Thomas the exact amount. I had told him my mother had left me some money, and that I intended to use it for a house deposit. He had said that was a good idea. What I did not know was that he had told his mother, Patricia, the amount. I found this out later. At the time, 3 weeks after my mother's funeral, Thomas said his family wanted to take us to dinner. He said it would be good for me. He said his mother had suggested it as a way of showing support, and that his family wanted to be there for me during a hard time. I said okay because I was tired, and because saying okay was easier than explaining that what I needed was approximately 6 more months of quiet and my mother back, neither of which was available. We drove to the restaurant on a Saturday evening. It was a nice restaurant, the kind with a wine list and cloth napkins and portions that are described rather than listed. I noticed when we arrived that the table was large, larger than I had expected. Thomas's parents were there, his 2 brothers and their wives, his sister and her husband, 3 cousins, 2 family friends I had met once, 14 people total, settled around a table that had clearly been reserved in advance, with the particular settled comfort of people who have arrived somewhere they expected to arrive at and are exactly where they plan to be. The dinner lasted 2 hours. I want to tell you what those 2 hours were like from the inside, because the inside of them is not what you might expect. It was not hostile. Nobody was unkind to me. Patricia squeezed my hand. Thomas's brothers told stories that made the table laugh. Wine was ordered and poured, and the food was good, and the conversation moved the way restaurant conversation moves, across topics and back, easy and circular. I was present and quiet, the way I was always present and quiet at Thomas's family gatherings, which was more than I would have chosen and less than they noticed. I was grieving and tired, and I told myself I was glad I had come and that Thomas had been right that it would help, and that his family was trying, in their particular loud, warm way, to make me feel less alone. And then the bill arrived. It was placed at the center of the table in the practiced way of restaurant staff who have been told to leave the check without designating a recipient. Patricia looked at it. Then she looked at me. She said, "Diane, why don't you get this one, given everything?" That was the sentence, given everything. 4 words that contained a complete assumption, fully formed, apparently discussed in advance, that my mother's death and the money she had left me made me the appropriate person to fund a 2-hour dinner for 14 people at a restaurant I had not chosen on an evening I had not wanted to attend. I looked at the bill. I looked at Patricia. I looked at Thomas. Thomas looked at the table. Not at me. At the table. I picked up the bill. I looked at it. The total was $642 before tip. I set it back down. I opened my bag. I took out enough money to cover my meal and a portion of the shared appetizers, and I placed it on the table. I said, "That covers mine." I picked up my bag. I stood up. I said, "Thank you for dinner," and I walked out. The restaurant was on the ground floor of a building with a car park on the side, and I sat in our car in the dark for 20 minutes, listening to the sound of my own breathing and the distant noise of the city. And I did not cry, and I did not call anyone, and I did not go back inside. I thought about my mother. I thought about the $68,000 she had saved across 40 years. I thought about this specific sentence, given everything, and the way Patricia had said it with the ease of a woman who had rehearsed it, or at least anticipated it, the way you anticipate something you have already decided is going to happen. I thought about Thomas looking at the table. I drove home. I was in bed by 10. Thomas came home at 3 in the morning. I know the exact time because I looked at my phone when I heard the door. He came into the bedroom, and his voice had the particular quality of a man who has spent several hours being told he has been wronged and has arrived home ready to deliver that message. He said, "What you did tonight was pathetic." He said, "My family was trying to support you, and you humiliated me." He said, "They relied on you, and you walked out like a child." I lay in the dark, and I listened to all of it. I did not argue. I did not explain. I said, "Go to sleep, Thomas." He said more things. I said, "Go to sleep." He eventually did. I did not. I lay in the dark until 5 in the morning, and I thought about the word pathetic, and the word humiliated, and the phrase, "they relied on you." And I thought about what it means to rely on someone, which is to expect something from them without asking. And I thought about what it means to be called pathetic for declining to meet an expectation that was never agreed to. And I thought about my mother, who had been precise and practical, and who had told me to build something permanent and to do it without waiting for someone else to make it possible. At 6 in the morning, I got up. I made coffee. I opened my laptop. I searched for family law attorneys in my area. I booked the earliest available appointment. I did not tell Thomas. The attorney was a woman named Clara Vance, who had the efficient, unsentimental manner of someone who has heard many versions of this story and has very clear opinions about all of them. I told her everything in 25 minutes. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "I want to ask you something before we discuss options." I said, "Okay." She said, "Is the inheritance money in a joint account?" I said, "No." I said I had not yet transferred it anywhere. It was still in the account my mother had set up in my name alone before she died. Clara said, "Keep it there. Do not move it to any joint account. Do not discuss the amount with your husband or his family again." I said I had already decided that. She said, "Good." She said, "Now tell me about the marriage, not the dinner, the marriage." I told her about the marriage. I told her about the 3 years of Thomas's family being the default priority, of decisions made in consultation with Patricia before they were made with me, of the particular pattern of a man who loved his wife genuinely and loved his mother's approval more. Clara listened. She said, "What do you want the outcome to be?" I said, "I want Thomas to understand what happened at that dinner, not the walking out, the before it, the planning of it." the given everything, the looking at the table. I said, I want to know if he is capable of understanding it. She said, what if he is not? I said, then I want to know that too. Clara prepared a letter. It was not a divorce filing. It was a formal document outlining the incident, referencing the inheritance as my sole property under relevant statutes, and requesting a meeting between both parties and their respective counsel to discuss the financial boundaries of the marriage going forward. Thomas received it on a Thursday. He called me 4 times before I picked up. When I answered, his voice was different from the 3 in the morning voice, quieter, with something in it I had not heard before. He said, Diane, I did not know they were going to do that. I said, I know you did not plan it. I said, but you knew at the table. You knew when Patricia said, given everything, and you looked at the table instead of at me. He was silent for a long time. He said, you are right. I said, I know I am. I said, the question is what you do now. He said, I want to fix this. I said, fixing it means specific things. It means a conversation with your mother about what happened and what it cost. It means your money and my money being explicitly structured separately until I have reason to trust that mine is mine. It means that the next time your family makes a decision that involves me, you look at me first. He said, I can do that. I said, I'm going to need to see it. Not promised, done. We are not at the end of this story. We are somewhere in the middle of it, the place where things are either repaired properly or they're not, and I'm watching carefully, and I have a lawyer, and my mother's money is exactly where she left it, and I have not moved it anywhere yet, because I'm waiting to see what kind of foundation it is actually safe to build on. That's where I am. That's my story. If it stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop your city in the comments. Hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.